Welcome to the Research Works podcast, live from the European Academy of Childhood Disability Conference 2024 in Bruges, Belgium. Join us for interviews with keynote speakers, world-renowned researchers and clinicians, and behind-the-scenes stories from one of the great paediatric conferences in the world.
And now I have Marleen Sol from University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. Hello and welcome.
Hello, thank you.
It's so lovely to meet you. Thank you for being here. And I've been, when I saw your abstract, I was very keen to speak with you. And I know you've got your poster presentation a little bit later today. But when I read the title, everyone will understand why I'm so keen on this. It's titled A Roadmap for Implementation of Pediatric Wheelchairs Skills Training in Rehabilitation.
Exactly, yes.
Very, very important and exciting work. So how about you give me a bit of a rundown, about 60 seconds or so, and then we'll take it from there. So yeah, if you can. I know it's really hard to do in 60 seconds.
I'll give it a go.
Give it a go.
Yeah, so this project was called the WIN project, the Wheelchair Skills Implementation Network project. And what we did is we had 5 rehabilitation centers with 7 locations that wanted to implement wheelchair skills training.
Great.
They all chose from their healthcare professionals a local implementation leader, a champion or a knowledge broker, what you can call them. Yeah. And they were facilitated by an implementation specialist, me, to implement wheelchair mobility skills training.
Yeah.
And how this worked is that we broke down the whole process of implementation in small steps, and we went from intention to action, from we want to implement wheelchair skills training to how are we going to make this happen.
Yes.
And that's what we've done in the project.
Yes.
And
very exciting.
and all the steps that we've done and the lessons we've learned and the examples are written in the roadmap that could be picked up by a new center to implement.
I love
training.
that. I mean, that's true knowledge translation, but it's also implementation science, isn't
it?
Yes. It's very, very exciting work. Well, let's go back to sort of, I guess, traditionally, in my mind, when I work clinically, what I've often observed is, you look for a wheelchair that fits the child, but the actual training on how to use it isn't always particularly standardized and it can vary so much. So what did you observe? Which I gather that's probably why you did this.
Yes, exactly.
Meeting a need.
Well, especially for this project, but in general, I think most interventions and even the most effective study will still need implementation to actually get it into practice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Why we did this here is that, especially in rehabilitation, you've got a diverse group of patients with complex needs. And for wheelchair-using children, that means a lot of different areas to focus on.
Yeah.
And the relative priority of training wheelchair skills training was not always put at the top of the list.
Yeah.
It was at the bottom, and it was never prioritized to actually go do a training session. So one of the areas we focused on in this project is how can we increase the demand for training by showing professionals, but parents and children, what the relevance is for training. Because a lot of professionals and parents and children are unaware about the possibilities of wheelchair skills training, what it can open up to become independent.
Yeah. And what kind of skills are you looking at here? Yeah,
well, I think that's the main difference. It's not just wheeling forward and backward and doing a turn. It's the actual skills that you need outside in daily life. For example, going down 3 steps with a parent together. If you are able to do that together, it will just open up your world outside.
Absolutely,
and we live, or at least in the Netherlands, we have in these rehabilitation centers and special needs school, they're all beautifully adapted. And it's very easy to roll around over there, which means you don't see the problems that you encounter when you actually go outside to your neighbor's house or into the city. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so for what population of kids are you talking about that use wheelchairs?
The population we aim at in the implementation process was all children who use a manual wheelchair.
Sure.
So this was focused on manual wheelchair and not power wheelchair training. Yep. But we did specifically say all children, because what we saw in children who are also capable to walk, that a lot of the therapy was focused on being ambulatory, because it was such an important point for parents and professionals as well, that there was no attention to the wheelchair, even though the child was outside in the wheelchair most of the time. It didn't walk outside for longer distances. You just used the wheelchair. Yeah. And it was never addressed in therapy. So
it's a really interesting thing, isn't it, where we would prescribe a piece of equipment that is usually pretty expensive. And it's the training becomes an afterthought. And it's interesting that's the case, because when you consider someone who might be, presenting of GMS level 2 or 3, they'll walk indoors in a nice flat surface, but a lot of them will use a wheelchair longer distances,
yes, exactly.
and majority of the time will be in their wheelchair if they're in the community. Talk to me a little bit more about some of the skills training in terms of how you would teach that. Like, what does the roadmap look like?
Well, the roadmap is actually the plan how to implement wheelchair skills training.
Okay.
So it looks at, for example, one of the first steps is that we've written down what are the core components of wheelchair skills training. And one of them is, for example, you train inside and outside. Okay. And one of the first steps is to sit down with your floor and discuss what are we currently doing different from the intervention. Sure. Because there's a lot of interventions where you think like where people believe they're actually doing something, but the actual act or the actual treatment they're giving is different. So you focus on participation, but what do you actually do to focus on participation in your treatment? And so we've written down 5 core elements of the training and said, well, this is the main basis of wheelchair skills training, and what do you currently do and not do, and which areas do we need to improve?
I see. And how, I guess in terms of a practicality perspective, how long would that take? I mean, it depends on the kind of goal they might have, who carries it out. Like, how does that part of it work, practicality wise?
Of a wheelchair skills training.
Yeah.
So one of the main elements is a minimum of 6 hours of training with parents there. Okay. Minimum of 6 hours training in a group, and minimum of 6 hours training with someone who's experienced in wheelchair use. Okay. So the actual amount of hours that we've set is minimum 6. So that's not that long. No. And but the point is you spread it out over time.
Yeah, I was going to say the period of time.
You get time to practice these skills in daily life. Yes. And what we saw in our implementation project is that most centers did like a short intensive period of like 8 weeks, where they did once a week a program, just because it was easier to fit into the schedule of the program. Yeah. So it's not a long program at all. Yeah. Compared to different therapies. Yeah.
And how would you evaluate? I mean, apart from the fact that the person says, I feel more confident, I can do all these things. Is there a way of evaluating how effective this is?
Yeah. So what we've done in this project is basically a spin-off of my PhD project, which was about assessing the effectiveness of wheelchair skills training. And what a part of it is that you do the assessments based on wheelchair skills tests, but also on participation goals, and you can set them up, individually target them, or individually describe them at the start of the project and measure them at the end of the project. But the most important thing is that you take that with you throughout the training. So you don't assess it at the beginning and you assess it at the end, but it's a follow-up, because what we've realized, what we've heard back, is that it's very... it's opened the eyes to therapists, to parents, of what children are actually capable of if they start practicing, and they soon exceed expectations. And you adjust your goals on where you're going to go. Yeah.
Look, I think that's so relevant to, oh gosh, I say this all the time, but we are becoming so consistent now with the thinking and our approach, and even the theme of this conference being a symphony. Yeah. And you're thinking about lots of different groups of people that represent different kinds of interests. The keynote this morning about identity and the fact that you have someone who's a wheelchair user also training and showing them what that looks like. You know, you're looking at different ways for these children to know how they fit in community and how they can participate, and therefore what are the possibilities.
I know.
It's really exciting.
And one of the main aims of this wheelchair skills training is not even to learn the wheelchair skills. It's more to make the child feel like he's in control of his wheelchair, is having fun in his wheelchair, that it's becoming an object that he enjoys instead of that it's a limiting
that's right. And like you said, it just opens up their world. Like to go, I mean, I can't even imagine going up and down 3 steps. You say 3 steps?
Yeah, but with the 3 steps, well, some people are able to do it independently, but to do it with a caregiver. So how do you do it together?
Okay.
Like, obviously we don't want the children to fall, but it's a skill you can learn, but it's a skill you don't know about if you've never seen it.
That's so true. Yeah. Look, I've only ever had to go, I remember I was at a university and I had to push around a trolley with catering. And they said the space is wheelchair accessible, so I should be able to push this around. And I said, okay, I'll go and get it. And I remember I was 15 minutes late, because yes, it's accessible, but there are a few steps here and there. or it was a bit too steep and I had to go all the way around to get from one place to the other. And I came there and I thought, you know what? Wheelchair accessibility isn't just the fact that it's flat. It's also about the time and distance to get from one place to another.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also for children who live and want to play in the playground across the road, they don't want to go to the end of the sidewalk to go down the slope and go back up. So one of the another strategy we've developed is that we've developed a wheelchair skill trainer course.
Great.
And one of the steps in that is that the trainers actually the therapists actually go outside in the wheelchair to feel what the real world in a wheelchair is like, and to start to read the environment on where can you go with your wheelchair and how can you navigate these obstacles.
That's so great. So you've mentioned two things there, and that'll be really interesting for people to know how to get more information. So when it comes to wheelchair skills training, when it comes to this roadmap, how do people get a hold of this? What can they do to follow this work? Yeah,
well, you can follow me on LinkedIn. So
Fabulous.
I'm on LinkedIn. And the roadmap, the final product will be expected this summer. And then that will become available.
Yep.
And I think the main message that I still want to bring across about implementation is it's about focusing on the maintenance of the therapy program in the future.
Yes.
So not we need new trainers now, for example, but what does my organization need to still be able to run this program in 10 years' time?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really different perspective of how we need to look at bringing new innovations into.
It's true, isn't it? It's an organizational level. It's if you're prescribing a wheelchair, you're also always doing wheelchair skills training.
Yes,
they should go hand in hand. And I suppose hopefully this work will help to shift that dial so that they do go hand in hand. And we're never going to find an environment that's completely accessible. I think we would love that to be the case, but there are just some places where environmentally it's not even possible. But if we can find solutions, at least in the meantime.
Exactly. And at least, or that the child knows, what can I do and what can I not do, and then I need help. That also gives a feeling of being self-confident. If you know what to ask for help and know what you can do yourself.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this is very, very exciting work. Congratulations on all of that for doing your PhD and then taking the next step of looking at the implementation side of things. So we'll keep a close eye out for this to be released over the summer. Yeah. And so I'll keep in touch with you for that. So thank you so much for your time. All the best for your poster presentation later today.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And to the people who attend the conference, make sure you go and check out the poster as well. It's available. So make sure you go and have a look. Hope you enjoyed that, but I'll talk to you all again really soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.